Leroy Glover, Director of Player Programs for the Rams. Brian So with you here on 101 ESPN. And obviously, that homosexuality topic, the Supreme Court's looking at it again. There's this buzz going around that somebody in the NFL, well known, is going to out themselves this year. You're around guys. You've been in the locker room yourself. How do you think that would play today?
I think at the end of the day, most NFL organizations are focused on number one is keeping their locker room sort of a positive atmosphere. You talk about a lot of buzzwords. You talk about chemistry a lot. So that's going to come up big. I think the number one thing, as long as individuals within that locker room, as long as the men in that locker room love to play the sport of football, one, and two, are willing to go out there, work hard, and try to win for their respective organizations, that's going to be what counts above and beyond these other things.
I know there's a lot of private time in locker rooms where it is just team and you're able to build on that family. But I also look at the fact that you get the likes of media in there, which is mixed, and people are able to adapt and conduct themselves in front of that. Would it really be that different to have an open homosexual in really any sort of professional locker room?
I think as long as it's handled the right way, you know, you're going to have leadership from all aspects and all levels of the organization on the same page about it, whether that be head coach, general manager, CFO, and then the leaders within that locker room as well. You got to remember one thing: if he's involved in that locker room, regardless of what he believes, he's got to be a pretty good football player, or in some shape, form, or fashion, be able to help the organization become successful. Yeah. And once again, that's all that guys like me care about.
I was going to say, as long as he's making the tackle or catching the pass, that's going to be the bottom line.
As long as he's doing his job, we'll live with the rest.
And I guess it's really just a matter of understanding in a lot of regards, because everybody's like, oh, I'd be afraid to go in the shower, that sort of thing. I don't know if it would really be that big a deal or not. I mean, everybody has the I rule anyway.
Yeah, who knows?
You're supposed to, right?
Who knows? You know, you never know in those situations, but I think awareness is where it starts. Making sure that guys from all levels, once again, of the organization are aware of the situation, it's accepted, and it doesn't affect the flow and the chemistry of your particular ball club.
With the draft coming up here in a few weeks, are you involved at all in the process as far as just talking to guys and getting to know the different prospects from combine on to just kind of gauge personalities?
You do try to engage personalities. You do try to engage whether there's a fit from a sort of a chemistry standpoint. And so, yes, I am involved in that from that standpoint.
And I think people sometimes have a lot of questions, too, as far as player programs. But you're kind of, if I'm describing this right, a link to the outside as terms of making plans for life after football. Is that an accurate way to kind of?
The way that I would put it is I assist young players transitioning into the National Football League. And at the end of the day, everyone's going to have to transition out, whether they like it or not. So I help athletes transition out as well. How I do that is through family assistance, financial education, career development. And so those are sort of the things that I live by in my department and what I try to provide to our athletes as well.
And a little bit of that dose of reality today for some of the kids out here?
Absolutely. I mean, it's good that they hear from guys in a professional setting and in professional organizations like this, because hopefully one day they'll be in our shoes.
I saw a couple guys come up to you afterwards. Were they coming up to you just because you're the former football player, or were they coming up maybe you're like, hey, give me a little bit of that extra advice because you've been there. I can trust you.
It's a combination of the two. Some of them were talking, obviously you're going to have football questions and concerns, or athletic questions or concerns, and then some of them were just sharing stories about maybe a situation where they were involved in some diversity issue as well. So you got a mixed bag.
Were you ever in a tough circumstance with that coming up? I mean, I remember you telling the story about Ditka not getting your name right, but that's kind of a different sort of thing. What was the toughest sort of diversity issue Leroy Glover had to handle?
Well, growing up in San Diego, we did have issues with gang violence. You know, whether it be Bloods and Crips, whether it be, you know, the Caucasian gangs, the Hispanic gangs, there was a lot of gang activity within that area. And so you're going to have to find a way to navigate through some of that stuff as well. And then obviously you can't wear red in certain areas, you can't wear blue in certain areas. And so some of that stuff, I don't know how existent it is today in San Diego or parts of the world, but I'm sure it still does exist.
Were sports what kept you on the straight and narrow, or was it kind of dicey at times having to navigate?
Sports was what I wanted to do, and so that really kept me out of a lot of those situations. But at the same time, you know, you got friends, you've got buddies, you've got teammates, you've got associates who were involved in some of those dicey situations. Some of my good friends who have since died been gunned down to gun violence as well growing up. So, I mean, you may not be involved in it directly, but indirectly, the effects of it, you know, are pretty powerful.
Is it tough to make the split? I mean, on the high school level, you can look at it as some of these kids are putting themselves in position to be scholarship athletes, and look at college, feeling that tug to stay back with the crew. In college, friends. In pros, guys, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget me. How tough is it to make that separation?
It's tough to navigate a lot of times if you don't have the proper tools. I would say that, but I think for those who are serious about it, about finding a different way, of finding a way to get out of a tough environment, a tough social economic level, about providing for their families, there are resources out there for them. And then secondly, I look at situations to where I wasn't always the biggest, fastest, or strongest athlete, but decision making is so important. Surrounding yourself with the right people is so important, and that's some of the stuff that I try to provide here in my current position with the organization.
Well, I know players will vouch, and we've seen it firsthand. You do make a big difference here. As always, appreciate the time, my friend.
Thanks for having me.